Welcome, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ian Grant. I'm the Executive Director of UNH's Entrepreneurship Center, the E-Center, so welcome. Great thanks to Heather McNeil, who you know runs the I2 Passport program, Genevieve Brown in the back, who's the Associate Program Manager, putting this all together. So this is one of our first big kickoffs, so welcome, enjoy. Tonight, really happy, so every semester we do an idea creation bootcamp or some process of that to really sort of give you the core tools as you start thinking about ideating in sort of this universe of innovation, ideas, entrepreneurship. Tonight, really happy to be here with Beth Willis, who is multiple titles, but really sort of head of innovation. It's a Toronto-based company, but based out of Manchester called Riverstone. Riverstone is also the sponsor of UNH's Entrepreneurship Club, so a round of applause for that. Beth came over from Liberty Mutual, where she ran the innovation team at Liberty Mutual, so high energy, a wealth of knowledge, and so with that, I'm going to pass it off. Hopefully everybody has swiped in for I2 Passport. The goal is to be done by 7:30. Thank you. Yeah. By 7:30, and we're going to try to keep to that time schedule. So thanks so much, Beth.
Can you hear me all right? Great. Well, yes, good? Okay, great. So I am so happy to be here. I literally haven't been out of my basement for about a year and a half, close to 2 years. So it's really exciting to be here with people, and thank you for having me. As Ian mentioned, I kind of fell into the innovation world, which I think most people do. You don't really start off your life thinking I'm going to be in innovation, but as you go on in your career, you think about how can I solve problems differently, how can we create new products, services, and experiences that will differentiate us and give us advantage in the business world and in whatever market you happen to be in. So that's kind of how I got into it. I've done jobs from public relations to marketing, internal and external, done a lot of internal communications work and a lot of work with technology. And that's kind of where I started to get into the innovation space. So tonight we're going to talk specifically about design thinking, human-centered design. There are a couple different names for it, and how you can leverage empathy as inspiration to create your own ideas and your own products that will help you stand out from the crowd. And this is a really important topic for me, because when I started doing innovation-related subjects and running an innovation team at a big company, one of the things I noticed is that nobody started with the users. So that's where this presentation kind of came from, so that I can help you do what people in the business world oftentimes forget to do. So let me start off by asking a question. How many people are familiar with innovation or human-centered design? Few folks. Okay, that's good. So there'll be a little bit of review, hopefully not too much review for you. For the rest of you, it's going to be a little bit like drinking from the fire hose, because tonight I'm going to throw some information at you, and then I'm going to put you to work, because there's no such thing in innovation as not getting your hands dirty. So it's very hands-on tonight. We're going to leave this room, come back to this room, do a lot of prototyping, and hopefully you'll walk away with new ideas about how you can approach the problems that you're trying to solve. If we had more time, I would go around and do introductions, but we're on a compressed time frame, so I'm going to skip that step, and I apologize for that. I do want to mention, though, that every single company up on this screen is here because they're innovative in one way or another. I always think that Apple is innovative not because of the iPhone or the iPad. They're innovative because of iTunes. They figured out a new way to distribute music, and that's really what sets them apart, because their hardware really isn't better than any other hardware. Netflix, actually, I just saw a meme today that don't give up on your dreams, we started with DVDs. So Netflix started as a DVD company. Their innovation was recognizing what was coming down the path and being able to get ahead of it. And there's no Blockbuster around today. So if Blockbuster had done that, they might be still, do you guys even know Blockbuster? Yeah, okay, good. Just making sure. Post-it notes happened by mistake. Does anyone know the story about Post-it notes? Yeah, it was because they were trying to find a strong glue. It was a complete failure. And instead, they used the failure as a bookmark. One of the guys used it as a bookmark for his Bible, I think, right? Do I have that right? It was something. So, and other people saw it and said, hey, can I do that too? And that's where Post-it notes came from. So innovation, and Gmail was an experiment. Somebody was fixing something that bugged them, and the guy next to him said, hey, can I try that too? And that's where Gmail started. And then, of course, it got a whole lot bigger from there. So innovation happens in different ways, but all of it starts from observing something and from having empathy for a user. So that's what we're gonna talk about tonight. So here's the fire hose part, so stay with me. So here's what we're gonna do. That was the welcome. Quick design thinking crash course. We're gonna do a fun little exercise called When I Grow Up. You'll understand when we do it. Then we have 3 kind of sections, and that's where we're going to do a little bit of work here. We're gonna go out into the world a little bit and then come back. And then we'll spend some time wrapping up and saying, well, what does this all mean to our work today? And what does this mean to your work tomorrow and down the road? So I told you a little bit about me, but I always also like to start off with a little bit about me too. I've got 3 kids. They keep me very busy. I've got my husband's up there. Sometimes I forget to put him in the pictures, so I made sure I did. And that's my dog, Rowdy, he was a little younger there. He's now 12 years old and a slow old man. So that's a little bit about me in my life. And I also like to start with this. So I think one of the challenges in helping people become innovative and to thinking new ideas is that we are not rewarded for being wrong. And so much of innovation comes from being wrong and learning from what doesn't work. So I always use this, being right constrains you. So start being productively wrong. Productively is the important part. So how many people get points for having wrong answers on a test? Like we don't, right? And so when you get into business, you don't get raises or you don't get good performance reviews generally for being wrong. And so that's something that as innovators, we have to work against because we know that when you're wrong, you learn more from what doesn't work than from what does. And the other line that I don't have up here is that being wrong, this process sometimes can feel uncomfortable. And so be prepared to be uncomfortable. And so that's the other thing. If something feels uncomfortable, that's okay, because there will be questions you don't have the answers to, you are not sure what the outcome's gonna be, and that's part of the innovation process as well, and sometimes people struggle with that. So we're gonna be productively wrong tonight, I promise you. We'll get started. So what is human-centered design? So human-centered design or design thinking, you can call it either name, is based on the basic principle that innovation happens at the apex of these 3 circles. So feasibility, can we make something work financially? Does it make sense? Viability, can we technically build something? Is it possible to build it? And desirability, will people actually want it? And the biggest problem we see is that people focus on the bottom 2 and not the top. So the whole theory behind design thinking is that we want to be right in the middle. We want to have desirability, people want it, feasibility, it makes sense financially to do it, whatever the ideal solution is, and viability, we can actually build it. You have to have all 3 of those things. But you want to start with desirability because if people don't want it, it doesn't matter what you build. It's also important to know what design thinking is not. It is not magic. And if you've worked for me anyway, working in the business world and introducing this concept, it is absolutely amazing, especially senior executives. They think it is magic, and they're always looking for the thing that's gonna make stuff magically happen, and instant, it's gonna make it faster. And this is not faster, it just leads to a better outcome. It is not exactly the same every time. Even though you follow a process, it's not going to go the same way every time, so you just have to be flexible and prepared for that. It's not an instant fix. It's not going to fix organizational problems. If you have cultural problems at a company, implementing human-centered design or design thinking will not fix that, and that's important to know. And it's not linear either. It's not something that goes from point A, point B, point C, and oh, I'm done. It's more circular. You keep coming back and improving, the idea of continuous improvement. So you'll see that in some of the models I'm going to show you next. And I think I already touched on this. It's not shorter necessarily. It just leads to a better outcome. So this is one model from, has anybody heard of the design firm called IDEO? They kind of coined, there's a little bit of debate, but they've kind of trademarked the term design thinking, and they do a lot of work in this space. So if you haven't visited, you can visit openideo.org, and I'm gonna send you a bunch of resources after tonight anyway, but IDEO is a great resource to learn about human-centered design. So they kind of design this curve. You start with defining the challenge, And I'll tell you, the biggest challenge I see, one of the biggest challenges, is that generally teams don't understand the problem they're solving, and they don't take the time to do it before they jump into solutioning. And so that's another thing we're going to experience tonight, is this idea of, do we fully understand the problem that we're solving? Because again, if you don't take the time to do that, whatever solution you're developing could end up being completely off the mark. And that actually generally does happen if you don't go back and really make sure you understand what the problem is. Observe people, observe human behavior. Look for things like workarounds or adaptations, and you're gonna see, I've got a little video I'm gonna show you where you'll see a little bit of that. And actually, has anybody, you guys shop at Market Basket? You probably do, right? There's one near here. Have you ever seen the baggers use the little orange stickers that go on milk to open bags? Because it's hard to get those bags apart. That's an adaptation. So if you're an innovator, you see them doing that, you think, oh, there could be something here. They're making something work. They're solving a problem with the existing materials around them. We might be able to do something with that. So that's where observations come in handy. They are so, so valuable. You use that to form insights. Oh gosh, I see someone using the sticker to open the bags. That might mean that there's something there for me to explore a little further. Use that to frame your opportunity. Maybe I can develop a new product around that. Brainstorm ideas. There could be a lot of different ways to solve that problem, and you want to explore all those ways. Try experiments, and then a lot of times that brings you right back to the beginning, which is why I like a more circular model. So this is what typically happens when, and you guys might have experienced this when you're starting a project or when you're starting an idea. You make choices, right? You converge really quickly, and you say, okay, so I have this solution. And this happens in companies all the time, where teams will start by narrowing down. With human-centered design, we start by diverging, which is going out and considering a lot of different possible solutions for a problem in the beginning. Then we converge. And so that's one of the differences between traditional work and human-centered design or innovation, using innovation methodology. And design starts with humans. If I'm solving the grocery store problem, I'm not going to be able to do that unless I go and watch the people and watch what they're doing. It's also about building to think. So I might not just come out of the gate with a fully baked product. I might prototype first, and we're going to do a little bit of that tonight. It's asking the right questions, being curious, saying, why are you doing that? Instead of giving someone the answer, ask questions about why they might be doing something. Ask the grocery store man, why are you using, although that one's kind of obvious, but why are you using the sticker to open the bag? Is there any other way to do that? Is there, And this is another view I mentioned. So there's the curve, but I kind of like this one better. Understand the problem, observe, develop a point of view, ideate, think of a lot of different ideas, prototype from those ideas, test those ideas, and then I'm not gonna really talk about the last part in this session, but I'll touch on it a little bit. So that's when you get to the end, you've kind of converged, you've done a lot of testing, you feel pretty confident people are gonna want your solution, and then you might pilot in the market and then start thinking about a business model. But what I like about this is how you're always gonna go back. When you learn something, you go back again and you prototype. And that's why it's important not to spend a lot of time on your prototypes and not to spend a lot of time early on, because most likely you're gonna discard those. So today we're gonna really focus here. And what's interesting to me is 2/3 of this continuum is based on deeply understanding the problem you're solving. And there's a reason for that. So I'm going to show you a short video. This is from a company called Menlo Innovations. Has anyone ever heard of Menlo? The founders of Menlo wrote a book called Joy, Inc. They both left the company they were at to start Menlo because they believed that there was a better way to work, a more joyful way of working. So it's a worthy book. It's on the reading list I'll give you after this session. So definitely read it. I've had the privilege of going to visit Menlo and see their system. And I really love this video that they put together. And it's all about observing people.
We need anthropology. We need to study people. And we need to study them in their native environment. Let me share with you just one brief example of how powerful this can be. We worked on a project for a county government for their vital records office. You know, a place you get birth certificates, death certificates, and that sort of thing. Our team came up with the screen designs, and I wanted to see them before they made the final presentation. And on the home screen were all these idyllic pictures of beach scenes and palm trees and white sand beaches and waves lapping out in the water. And I laughed. I said, these aren't the final screen designs, are they? This is the vital records office for the county government. What are you guys doing? And they're like, oh no, this is really important. I said, why? Did they ask for that? They said, oh no, they didn't ask. I said, well, how did you know you should put these in? They said, oh, we went to visit them. We studied them in their native environment. And, you know, after they got done with the interactions at the counter, they'd go back to their cubes and there were all these postcards there of all these idyllic beach scenes. And we asked them, we said, oh, you guys in a travel club? They said, no, we've never been to these places. Oh, do friends send you these? I said, no, we just bought them. And they looked at them and nothing on the back. They were just pinned up all over the place. They said, why the postcards? I said, oh, you don't understand. We're county employees. You know, customers come in to talk to us. And they're like, I pay your paycheck. He said, our blood pressure goes up. We'd go back to the cube and we'd want to settle down a little bit before the next client came in, right? And so our team saw that and they put these pictures in the home screen so while they were standing at the counter, they could have that sort of medicinal effect while they were talking to the client. When we showed those to the end users, literally tears started rolling down their face. They said, no one's ever listened to us like that before. And the point was, we didn't listen at all. We observed.
I think, is this back on all right? Okay. I think a lot of employees could use that right about now. So one of the most beautiful things about leveraging human-centered design in any work that you do, and so I want to be clear that this isn't just about innovation. Human-centered design plays into anything you do, is the ability to solve problems for people that they might not even know that they have. And it's so rewarding, and this is a great example of that. Deeply understand the problem you are solving. If someone comes to you and says, hey, we need to do this, the first thing you do is say, okay, wait, let me learn a little bit more about that before we get started. Prototyping is an important part of the process. I mentioned that you want to consider many ideas in the beginning, but you don't want to spend too much time on them, right? Because time is money, and the more money you invest, you're kind of eating away at whatever profit you could have at the end. So prototyping is really important, and this is just an example of a prototype that later became this pretty complex medical tool. But you can see how it started with a dry erase marker and some Scotch tape. So prototypes can be really, really, really low fidelity. And so and oftentimes it just starts with paper and pencil, and that's where we're gonna start tonight. Now, I don't want to downplay this last piece, piloting and the business model, because those are really important as well, but those come later. And you don't have to think about that in the beginning. And I do have one good example of in-market iteration that becomes part of your business model. So this is actually somebody I went to high school with, and he's a professor at MIT now. And this was a little bit ago. He's moved on to other things at MIT, but they designed an all-terrain wheelchair for people in developing countries at a very low cost, because these wheelchairs in the US can be $5,000 or more. And obviously that's not feasible when you go into a developing country where oftentimes doors aren't even made wide enough for a standard wheelchair. So his team, he's an engineer, and his team prototyped and went in market to iterate on a very, very low cost all-terrain wheelchair that would work for people in developing countries, and it's just fantastic. So this is an example where piloting and in-market iteration is really important. So that's a little bit of the crash course on what is human-centered design, what is design thinking. I hope what you're gonna walk away with is it's about the user, right? So keep that in your mind as we move on to the next piece. Today we're gonna focus on inspiration, empathy, and prototyping, because that's the core of what's going to help you differentiate. And it's going to help you understand the problem that you're solving. So we're gonna get our hands dirty, not literally, figuratively, but let's start off with a little team exercise. And also that's probably the most you're gonna hear me talk, so that's great. So at your team, as a child, to talk about this, I'm gonna give you like 3 minutes because we're gonna move right along in this session. What did you wanna be when you grew up and why? And then, okay, do that first. I'm gonna give you about 3 minutes. What did you wanna be when you grew up and why? All right, hopefully everybody got a chance to go. If not, I apologize for cutting you short. From your table's responses, choose one. So of everybody who said what they wanted to be, choose one. I'll give you 30 seconds to do that. And you can actually write it up on the flip chart that's by your table. Write your response in big letters. Yeah, you can write it right at the top, in big letters. Perfect.
It's okay.
Okay, so congratulations, you now have your team name. So if it doesn't quite make sense to you, like we've got Lego designers, we've got the daycare workers maybe. We have 3 vets. That's impressive, actually. We've got the pop singers. So maybe we'll do like vet 1, 2, and 3, the vets. The geneticists, archaeologists, and the marine biologists. So that's your team name. Nice job. Okay, so we're gonna start with chapter 1, which is all about prototyping. And so we'll get into the materials on your table in just a minute. But we talked about the problem statement a little bit, understanding the problem that you're solving. Oftentimes, with human-centered design, we use a how might we statement. And that's simply a way to help us frame the challenge in a way that's not too big. So you wouldn't do something like, how might we solve world hunger? Because I can't possibly do that. There's no team that can possibly solve world hunger. However, how might we provide underprivileged children with fresh fruit in cities? Now that's a problem I can probably wrap my brain around. That's much more manageable. So the how might we statement is all about framing your problem statement in a way that's not too big, but not too small. You don't want to bake a solution into your problem statement. So how suggests that we don't have the answer yet. You always enter any kind of problem, even if you're gonna have lots of ideas for the answers, but you put those aside. You wanna enter any kind of design thinking process with an open mind. So I don't know the answer yet to this problem, but I will. It helps us set aside prescriptive briefs. And if you haven't experienced this yet, you will someday, I promise, where somebody will give you a problem and they will also, I love being able to hang up from my watch. They will also give you the solution to that problem. Hey, go solve this problem by doing this. And we say, nope, we don't do that. So we're gonna consider many possible solutions to the problem. Might means that we might know the answer, but there might be many possible ways to get after a problem. And just because we choose one doesn't mean there aren't others too. It might also allows us, what did I say there? For exploration of multiple possible solutions. So not settling for the first one that comes to mind. Oftentimes the first idea that comes to your head is not the right one. In fact, it usually isn't. And then we means that this is a collaborative effort and also means that the solution is going to be a product of our teamwork. Generally, you won't be able to, by the end, identify any one person's idea in a solution, and that's the way you want it to be. So we're gonna do a how might we statement tonight. In the interest of time, I've written it for you, and we're gonna do some prototyping, we're gonna do some observation, and then we'll see what comes next. This is all about helping new students. So how might we help new students easily navigate and find what they need at the MUB? And I think this is the MUB, right? We're in the MUB. What you're gonna have to do is set aside what you already know. So that's gonna be your challenge tonight. You're gonna pretend that you've never been here before and maybe imagine back to when you were a new student and what would you want to know about navigating here and getting to what you need easily. That's the key part. So we're gonna start off with a little bit of brainstorming at your table. And in order to do that, we need some ground rules. Another short video.
All right, guys, let's do a little brainstorm. And the topic today is what, Lasta? What are we sermon on?
We're going to talk about bath toys.
Bath toys. So in the spirit of brainstorming, we're going to go for quantity. When we jump into that, give me lots of ideas and list them as a headline. We'd love to be visual, so do a quick sketch on this size, post-it or whatever, and then we can throw those up. And announce it to the whole group, not just to me. Lasta, what do you have? Announce
It's
it
a
up.
giant waterfall that's on your wall, so it'll pump it, so it makes your whole bathtub.
Yeah, what are those showers called with the deluge showers? Or yeah, that's awesome. Okay.
I was thinking like bathtub confetti. It's something that you put water in and it'll make that bubbling sound and all the bubbles will come out. So it sound like confetti.
That's kind of a fun. I was thinking literally it would shoot out confetti all over the bathroom.
It could melt if it dissolves, if it's dissolvable. Dissolving glitter, because glitter's such a problem.
Glitter soap.
Glitter soap.
So we're
I'll
doing-
write that
All
on
right,
the other
Kyle.
This is the blood and gore gross out body wash. So it's like red and it's got like little eyeballs in it and stuff like that.
Building on yours, you had like the soap pens or whatever. What about like using the tiles and using it as like tic-tac-toe and drawing on the tiles?
It's called Too Hot Henry. He tells you when the bath temperature's too hot, so you stick him on the bottom of the tub, and his face gets really red if it's too hot to get in.
So it's like a little action doll kind of thing? That's kind of funny. I think every kid wants to make Henry too hot, don't you? Fantastic, guys. 51 ideas in
5 minutes.
15 minutes or less. So, round of applause, everyone. All right.
Okay, any observations about their brainstorming session? Yeah, what did they do?
Literally any idea they were like, yeah, sure.
That's right. They're going for quantity, not quality, right? So they're in the beginning, you're not shooting down people's ideas at all. However, you can build on them. Oops, I gave away one. Go ahead. Who noticed something else?
Imagery, so like they had the idea name and they had to sketch out a little bit of it too.
Yeah, drawing is really, really important, and it does not matter if you think you're an artist or not. Because when you visualize an idea, it puts it in a different place in your brain than if you were to just say it. And it gives the other people the opportunity to build on it. So visualizing is really important whenever you can. What else?
Other people were stacking their ideas like on top of the original idea.
Yeah, they were building on it, right? So they were adding on it. And one of the things I teach in a corporation is I teach people to actually use different language. So when someone has an idea and it spurs an idea in your head, you say building on that idea. And it's a really easy way to encourage collaboration and also encourage people not to shoot down other people's ideas. So that's fantastic. Okay, where'd my clicker go? So, and these are also on your table in the chapter 1 materials, but just quickly, defer judgment. When you brainstorm, there are no bad ideas in the beginning. Encourage wild ideas. It doesn't matter if it couldn't possibly work. The wilder, the better in the beginning. So, release that part of your brain. Build on the ideas of others. Stay focused on the topic. While you want wild ideas, it's also important to stay focused. So they're not talking about anything but bath toys, and there's a reason for that. So it's okay to redirect your team if it's getting off topic. Be visual, we talked about that. One conversation at a time. You want a lot of ideas, but you also want to hear people, so don't talk over others. And go for quantity, not quality in the beginning. Now, what we're gonna do, I wanted to show you this. Has anyone seen The Founder? This is about how McDonald's was started. Yeah, if you haven't seen it, it's 100% worth watching because you'll watch it and go, oh, they did prototyping and design thinking. They actually used a tennis court to design the flow of McDonald's to improve how they built, and this was back in, I think, the 50s or 60s, maybe 60s, but design the flow of McDonald's so that they could be more efficient. So this is the groundwork for where McDonald's is today, and they did it by drawing and having the employees walk it. They didn't build a whole store. That would have cost a ton of money. So when I watched this movie, I was like, oh my God, they're prototyping. So if you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth watching. But it's a great example of how being visual and low fidelity is really, really, really important. Okay, so on your table, in the chapter 1 materials, you'll see the brainstorming and prototyping guide. That's pretty much just reminding you of what we just went through. So if you need it for reference, that's great. I've got the how might we question back up there again. How might we help new students easily navigate and find what they need at the MUB? I'm going to give you 10 minutes with your team to brainstorm, and you can use, there are some sticky notes. You can also just write up on the flip charts. Don't be afraid to use more pieces of paper or the back side of paper if you don't have sticky notes, or if you run out, that's okay. And then we're going, so after 10 minutes, I'm gonna kind of ring the imaginary bell, and we'll spend 20 minutes creating 1 to 2 as a team prototypes for your idea. And so in the chapter 1 materials, you'll also see some blank, iPhone screens, some computer screens that you might want to use for your prototypes. So 10 minutes brainstorming answers to this question. Try to forget what you know about the MUB already, if you can. And then we'll spend 20 minutes creating prototypes. Does anyone have any questions? I know I'm throwing a lot at you all at once. No questions, or no one wants to ask it. That's okay. I'm up here. You can come ask me questions if you need it. All right, go for it. Yes, sorry.
Should we shout out our ideas as we come up with them to the people at our table, or draw it up first?
Oh, well, you want to draw it out, and then, okay, great question. So you can do it a couple ways, but sometimes it's helpful to build up a lot of ideas and then share them and let that spur more ideas. So maybe spend a couple minutes writing your ideas and drawing some sketches, and then share it with your table. And so you can build off each other's ideas. Great question. You can also do it as it comes to you too. So it depends on how your table prefers, but sometimes it's useful to give people a couple minutes first. All right, go ahead, I'm gonna set my timer.
And then it will show you like each floor and have like
All right, if your team hasn't started to think about prototyping, let's make that shift now. So I see a ton of great ideas, which is fantastic. That's just what you want to be doing. Now it's time to think about how are we going to create a prototype of one of the ideas. And it could be a combination of the ideas. You can meld some ideas together. If you're thinking about a technology-related solution, I have some blank iPhones and blank screens that you can play with, but I don't want that to limit you. Because I saw a lot of ideas that have nothing to do with technology, which I love, or maybe it's not a phone technology, which I love. Choose something to prototype and be creative about how you're going to prototype it. Would you do it yourself? Would you walk around? So think about how you can do that. You can use the paper also from the flip charts. Use whatever you have available to you and take 20 minutes to create some kind of drawing or prototype of one or a combination of your ideas. Does anybody have any questions about that? Think as simple as possible. One thing to keep in mind as you're working on your prototypes is we are going to be testing these out. So think about creating something that you'll be able to interact with somehow.
yeah, definitely.
Let me ask, are most teams, are you doing pretty well in your prototypes? If we wrap it a little earlier, give you a few more, okay. Yeah, because it looks like people might be doing okay on prototypes. So maybe what I'll do is steal a few minutes back, because I think we started a little late. Great. All right. Apologies for any teams that I'm cutting time off, but you can get it back, don't worry. So just a quick reminder that this whole process is meant to change outcomes, not just techniques. Because I remember when we first started doing, when I was working at Liberty Mutual and we first started doing this type of thing, it was a real learning journey, because at first everybody just thought if you wrote everything on sticky notes, it would be magic, and that's just not the case. So the whole goal of this is to change your end result and your outcome. It's not about the technique. The techniques help us get there. So I just think it's important to keep that in your mind. So we said this in the beginning. Design starts with humans. In order to understand humans, we're all humans, so sometimes that works for us and against us, because as humans, we think we know everything about all other humans, and so we kind of have to forget that. We have to start with empathy. We must have empathy. So just so we're all on the same page, what do I mean when I say empathy? In a general sense, it's our ability to see the world through other people's eyes, to see what they see, feel what they feel, and experience things as they do, or at least try. And it requires a degree of humbleness, the ability to set aside your own ego and say, I'm going to fully immerse myself in this other person's experience as much as I can. And I'll just give you a quick example, and this is a fantastic example, and I will give you, there's a whole video on this next example that David Kelly, who's one of the founders of the design firm IDEO, he gave a TED Talk about building creative confidence. It will be in the post materials that we send out after this session. I highly recommend it because he does a much better job. I'm going to give you a highly abbreviated version of the story. Essentially, he was working with one of the engineers that designs these MRI machines, and they were specifically noticing, so everything starts with an observation, an inkling of a problem, that when children were sent in to get an MRI, I think the rate that they had to put them under, so sedate them, was about 80%. That's extremely high and children, you want to kind of avoid sedating them if you can, and that means completely putting them under, but they would freak out so much going into the MRI machine that they had to. And the engineer that designed this was very, very distressed by the fact that so many children had to be sedated in order to get an MRI, which, of course, they had to get the MRI, so he engaged with IDEO to create a new way to do this and to create a solution for that problem. So what they did was they ended up turning it into an experience, and actually there's a name. What did they end up? Oh, so they turned it into, this particular one is a pirate ship experience. So they would tell the child that, oh, you're going on this pirate adventure and you're going to sneak onto the pirate ship, but you have to be really, really quiet so you don't wake up the pirates. And so after this one was really successful, I think the rate went down to under 20% of sedation, turning it into an experience, turning it into a fun adventure for kids instead of something that was terrifying. And so they created a whole bunch of different themes. This is just a picture of the pirate one, but it's just an example of how having empathy for what a child might see when they go into this big scary machine and you can't move for an extended period of time. Ooh, maybe if we made it fun, we might be able to avoid sedating these children. It's all about empathy. So it's a good reminder, and I highly recommend you watch the full video, which we will send out after the session, but it's a good place to start us from as we get out into the world. So we're gonna divide your team, and this is why it's good to have multiple people on your, slightly larger group for your team. Divide into two groups. One group will be researchers, and one group will be participants. And so if you're a researcher, and so the whole goal, what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your prototype in some shape or form, you're actually gonna go out into the mud and try it out and simulate it as best you can. So for example, if your idea is different signage, you might wanna send your folks out first to kind of simulate that signage ahead of time so that the participants can go and experience that as much as possible. Participants, you're gonna pretend you've never been to the mud before and try to use the prototype to help you navigate. If you're a researcher, you're a fly on the wall. So you're gonna take notes on what people do and observe their behavior. Take photos, that's really important because that will help you later on to remember what you saw and what you did. Ask questions like, tell me more about that, or why did you do that? What you don't wanna do as a researcher, and this is a valuable lesson for the rest of your professional life. Don't answer questions for people. If somebody is interacting with one of your prototypes and they ask you, hey, what is this for? Your inclination will be to try to help them, to tell them, but don't do that. Instead say, well, what would you imagine that would be for? Because then you're gonna find out what they think. Otherwise, you're planting your idea in their head. So try not to do that if you're the researcher. Just be the fly on the wall, ask questions that elicit responses, but don't give answers if you can help it. Unless someone's in an unsafe situation, then you can give them an answer. So participants. So your mission is to identify, find something that a new student might need, and then try to use a prototype to help you find it. Interact with the prototype as best you can. Pay attention to what works well and what could be better. And pay attention to how the experience makes you feel. What do you wish for as you're going through this experience with the prototype? So if it's if it's a mobile app, you can actually take it in your hands and try to use it to navigate to whatever you're trying to find in the MUB. Take a break if you need it, because I know this is a long session, so take a break. You've got about 30 minutes. Maybe if you come back earlier, that's okay too. We'll keep on moving. Because this isn't, I gave 30 minutes, but the building's not quite as big as I thought it would be, so maybe you won't need it. I'll be here. Clearly, I don't know the MUB very well, because I said I'll be in the MUB, but I am in the MUB, so here I am. I'll be here to answer any questions, and just be safe. And if it's helpful to interact with folks out there without, bugging people too much, go ahead and do that if that's gonna help you learn about your idea and your prototype. Any questions? There's also, in the chapter 2 materials, there's a note sheet for observers, for researchers, and there's a guide as well. And all these materials, by the way, are things you can take with you. They're guides to prototyping and observation in general that you can use in other things as well. So they're meant to be informational beyond just for today. Do you have any questions about our next mission? You can leave your bags and whatnot here. We'll be in the room, so you don't need to worry about that. Just bring a pen with you if you're a researcher.
There's no limit on the experience if you want to. Yes. Is there another? Isn't there another?
All right, I'm going to keep on going, and we'll fold the last group in when they come back, just in the interest of time. So let's talk quickly about why we did this. So anybody want to share some of their experience? What was it like? What did you feel? What did you learn? Did anything surprise you about going out and trying to interact with the prototypes? Yeah.
Well, looking at our prototype compared to what we have in our heads, it's kind of hard to find where the gray area actually ends. So when we were doing our observation, we kind of just had one person looking at the app, kind of telling the observer what they see, and then just walking through what this actual use would be. So that's kind of how we go along with the observation stuff.
So you noticed that maybe what the user was experiencing was different than what you thought it would be? Is that what you're saying?
That and there was specific elements that we had previously thought to include, and those elements actually ended up working really well. One of the examples was we gauged the size of the rooms with the scale of the circles on the map, and that actually ended up helping us determine which direction we were coming from and which way we had to go.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So you found that really helped the user navigate by using scale. That's cool. So that's something that worked really well. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, so one of our things we wanted to test was whether someone could like instead of just walking by it, if they would take a second and look at it. So we put it like a pretty tracked area. We put just like a little cup in the middle, and people would walk by and like just a little cup, they would take a look and ask questions about it. Seemed like there was a pretty good return rate. I'd say around 90%.
That's pretty cool. So putting something that people might not expect elicited a response, so you could use that. That's really neat. That's a good idea. What else? Anybody, something that you didn't expect to see, or something that didn't work as well as you thought it would? Anything else? Any other just observations from using your prototype? Yeah.
We just asked, like, we're also doing an app, and we just went up to the help desk and basically asked like questions about it, and one thing was like body ethics, and we were replacing them, basically replacing their job.
So the app would replace their job. So you might have some resistance there, right? Because if people think and that actually happens a lot when with automation and when technology comes in that can replace humans, then those humans might stand in the way and pose objections because they're like, well, what am I going to do? But they're also really good sources of information because that person probably knows all the frequently asked questions and things that confuse people too. Excellent. Okay, so what I would like, let's see, how are we doing on time? So we have 20 minutes left. What I would like to do is, I'm going to fast forward some of this content, but what I would like you to do is spend, let's see, what you would normally do after going out and doing an observation. You'd come back with pages and pages and pages of notes. Another trick, if you're observing people and people are talking, write down exactly what they say. Don't paraphrase, because that's injecting your own bias somehow when you paraphrase. So you want to try to write what people say verbatim, and then you come back and synthesize it as a group. Synthesizing your observations is probably one of the more challenging parts of the process because you have so much content that the challenge is what matters and what doesn't. So what do you pay attention to and what do you not pay attention to when you're trying to make sense of all the information you've gathered from your user research, from your observations? And so what you try to do, and the reason you synthesize observations as a group is you're trying to take everything that's in everybody's minds and make it group knowledge so that everybody shares that, and it's not just in one person's head anymore. And that's important so you're not building pillars of knowledge within your team that nobody else shares. And there's a number of reasons why that's good for the team. First of all, you can build on each other's ideas more readily. Secondly, if somebody leaves the team, it's not as hard to capture their knowledge because you've already done it as a team. So this is more, you have this in your handouts in chapter 3, and I would take it with you. I'm not going to go through it in depth because we have a limited amount of time left together. But essentially what I'd like you to do is just spend a few minutes in your team and talk about your observations and think about what worked, what didn't, and what insights. So I heard some insights already, like, oh, the help desk person might be nervous that this app would replace them. That's an interesting insight. Oh, if we put something that's unexpected in the flow of traffic, that's going to garner attention. How long will it garner attention for? There's probably some additional questions that we'll bring up. But that's a really good insight that you will probably be able to use in your prototype. So we're going to take about 5 minutes, synthesize your observations, so kind of put them all together and figure out, are there any interesting insights that we can use in our prototypes? And then I want you to take another 5 to 7 minutes to redraw your prototype based on what you learned. And so maybe nothing has changed at all. Maybe you were able to confirm everything in your prototype, but chances are you probably learned at least one thing that would make you make a change to your prototype. So let's take 5 minutes to talk about it and then about 5 to 7 minutes to recreate your prototype. And here, just forget the timing because I'm adjusting it a little bit, but just in case you've forgotten the how might we statement, this is what we're after here. So go ahead, 5 minutes to talk as a team about your observations, what you learned. All right, so I'm going to pick on a team to get started, and what I'd love to have you do is share your kind of like, where did you start, what did you learn, and where did you end up? Those 3 things, concisely. So I'm going to start, how about right here, a marine biologist.
First, we had like an idea for an app. I think we were going to incorporate it into the original UNH app. And but then we decided to like look into Walmart and Target and like how you can find like the coffee aisle, and then we like made the navigation so you had a starting and end point, like, and we could see the hallways and everything. And then after, yeah, that's what it looks like. And then after that, we looked at the Campus Rec app, and then we decided like maybe we could do a whole separate app just for navigation, like not even just for the map, but like all the hallways and all the buildings here.
I'm gonna bring a mic around. Thank you. What I love about what you said is you talked about inspiration from Target and Walmart and how they will note what aisle the products are in. So analogous inspiration is amazing. So find something that inspires you from something that's completely unrelated to what you're working on, and then bring what works about that idea into your work. So thank you. That was fantastic. And we're gonna have the mic for the next team. Sorry about that. How about right here, the Lego designers? Tell us, where'd you start, what'd you learn, and where'd you end up?
There's a problem that needs to be solved. So our idea was basically like an app as well, and the inspiration would come from the original mall. They have like the little kiosk things.
Yeah.
You type in where you want to go and tell you, all right, you're starting here, go this way, this way, this way.
Love those.
Kind of like that, but at least for here. So the idea would be like these kiosks around the different entry places. You would type it in, I want to go to this room 207, and it would show you like a little QR code, and you would scan it with your phone, and then it would give you a little direction on how to get there.
I love it. So kind of like, would it be like step-by-step directions using your phone?
There, go straight down, keep a right.
I love it. And I feel like that could be used anywhere on campus too. So that could be an idea that could start here, learn from it, and then move it, expand it to other places. I love it. That's fantastic. Okay, where am I going next? How about back of the room, the geneticists, and speak up, please.
So basically start out with kind of the idea of like, we like the idea of like multiple people in groups. Like whenever I'm trying to find a class, I know like if there's something I know in that class, I'm gonna want to try and find them. So we start out with the find my friends idea of like, you know, someone's already there and you kind of follow that location. And then we kind of like, oh, heat maps. So we're like, oh, what if we did VR? So we did a bunch of different ideas. And then we kind of settle on like, you know, what if we did like just basics, simplify it? Because when you're stressed trying to get to a class, you're not trying to do all the features. So just make a basic, almost Google Maps kind of style, where it goes pinpoint. So it's like walk to this pinpoint, that'll get you to the stairs. Then you go up the stairs, and you find another pinpoint, which is going to be go up this to the right, and then kind of make it so it walks you through it really simply. And then that's how we got our app, basically. So.
I love that. So kind of using geolocation. Did your prototype change at all from when you first did it to when going out and then coming back? Did you change anything about it?
Yeah, we lost connection in the basement, so we tried to figure out if there was like a downloadable feature where you could like download a way to do it beforehand. So we thought that'd be an interesting feature.
That's smart. So you added a feature after kind of going out and walking the building. That's really cool. I know I would appreciate the step-by-step navigation. Excellent. Okay, how about right here? Sorry, I can't see your. I think you were vets 1 or 2.
Yeah. Well, we were also thinking about an app, but we're like, you know, there is really bad service in here, and not everybody has their phone out or wants to have their phone out looking all like a freshman. So we decided to do, you know, the Mother Hub. And we have a lot of blank walls when you walk in, and you're not sure where you are. So we decided to do a mural of the floors at the front of each entrance that, you know, has big pinpoints and, you know, artistry that show where each thing is. And then after our prototype, we went out there, and when we had someone go up, they were a little bit confused about where things were, because as you see, it's not very detailed. So when you go up to each floor, there will not only be an outline of all 3 floors, but a bigger, more detailed mural of the floor itself that you're on. And it will have, like, you know, little cartoons to show this or that, and what each room is and where it is, and maybe what's in that room. And then it would have, like, you know, the other floors next to it. And so it would just be a way to combine art and, you know, make the mob a little bit more beautiful while also directing you in the right area.
I love that. So after going out, you added the more detailed feature. You realized there was a need for more detail. And I also like that it addresses 2 potential challenges. So 1, poor service, and 2, if you have folks who are international, it might help them as well to be more pictorial and visual than depending on English. So I think that's fantastic. Nicely done. Good. You guys ready? What do you think? Okay.
So we had the idea of making a directory, kind of like the directory that you find in mall and everything to find something to go. I really like those, they're great.
I do too.
So we originally had the idea of on the directory, you know, it'll have the different floors, a list of locations, it can be a possible one of those moments, questions, interaction as well. And if you need to go from one place to another, you can show the direction here. And we originally wanted to have a card swipe on it, so it would like send the directions to your phone in case you know, you don't get lost. But after observation, we noticed that it's a little confusing, so we kind of took that feature away. So instead, maybe have a feature where you can put your number in and it will send like direction right to your phone instead.
That's fantastic. So what we're seeing with every single group is this is just from a paper prototype. How much money did we spend doing these? Almost nothing, right? Just your time and some paper and a pencil. And you've already learned really important insights that are improving the product before you've built a thing. So that's really important to have that insight that, ooh, it might be a pain in the neck and too complicated to swipe the card. Let's do it in an easier way and make it easier for users. Because if you make it too hard for them, they just won't use it. And then it's like, well, that didn't work. So that's great. Thank you very much. Hey, you guys.
We basically came up with an app as well. And it would just be like, you would load up like your camera on your phone. That's what would come up when you go into the app. And as you look around, you could like figure out where you are based on your location and like what you're looking at. And it would just show up with like an arrow, and like depending on your school, whatever school you would put, we have like wildcat footprints, and like you could walk around and it would just show you like the direction of where to go with like the footprints and the arrows, based on like which place you input. And like we have common places at the bottom, events that are going on in the building that you're at, and then just like a help section.
That would be really cool. So is the idea, like if you're close to the event or in the general area, you'd get an alert in the app that, oh, this event is happening right now?
Yeah, that's not something we talked about, but definitely might be something we could do.
That's
but
cool.
We just put like an events tab.
Yep.
And like if you click that, it shows like all the events that are going on in the building that your location's at.
I love the idea of having the footprints. That's really easy as a user to follow, and you can, you know, funny enough, I've actually a couple of times I've been in Ireland, in Dublin, and I try to be really discreet so I'm not that much of a tourist, but I definitely use the phone and the directions so I'm walking along and I don't get completely lost. So I think that would be really useful. Did you change anything about it after going out and trying to use your prototype?
We didn't change anything, but we just like realized the importance of the commonplace. Like we said, we talked to the help desk people and a couple other people who just said like, having something in folks that's a really popular area, because the help desk people said that a lot of people ask about like the same places.
Same places. So having kind of those frequently used and letting the users define that too. So where are users going to a lot? It would probably be important. So maybe having a feedback mechanism in there too. Or you could just like kind of crowdsource where everybody's going. That would be cool. Nice. Who hasn't gone yet? Yes.
Yeah, so we started off with the basic, like, kind of like we wanted to do something creative. So we originally had like a stand at main entry points that you would go up to. It'd be interactive, somewhat of our prototype. You'd go up to it and like you would click buttons and it would have this crazy display. And then one of the problems we came up with, the prototype number 2, well, the solution was to make it more cost effective. We had a thought to do it more like kind of like an art piece, like a glass house, or kind of to resemble the building. And you would click a button in like simple circuitry, so there wasn't any complex technology, and it could be very cheap, so that you could build multiple of them. You'd click a button, and it would create like a little light display in the glass building to the direction you were going. And then at different entry points, it would be different like orientation, and it would be all within like another glass casing, just to keep it like kind of artistic.
That's very cool. So you kind of have a multiple ways to interact with it. It's kind of lighting the pathway, and at the same time, it's a little bit of 3D too, like 3D in terms of it's actually a thing.
You could get like the art side of UNH involved in it, so it would keep the costs low.
Well, it could be and any of these could be a cool collaboration project. I was saying to Ian that I bet I can see these being a real thing. These are great ideas. I love it. Back to the back.
Okay, so we started with this idea of a hologram, being able to visually see the MUB and icons that represent all the activities that are in the MUB. So like the movie theater, being able to click it, and then being able to have basically a light up map that brings you to it. But then we also combined it with, you know, those ride-along like animals that you can ride along in the malls, basically.
Yeah. Try to keep my kids out of those. It's really hard.
We thought that would be a fun way to bring fun and life to the MUB. So being able to have the hologram attached to this and being able to have this bring you to the destination in the MUB could be a fun way to get around and just bring a little fun into your college career, because it can be stressful, and being able to come to a little playground could be fun and entertaining for them. So.
Like a playground for college students. Did you change anything when you went out and kind of did your observation?
Yeah, so we actually used Benny's electric longboard for our prototype.
Love it.
And we were originally going to do tracks that bring you around the MUB, but then we decided to stick to the wheels and we were also going to do kind of like a beanbag style, but then we resorted back to the elephant because it's just fun and it brings a little life into your day, because why not?
You couldn't not smile when seeing that. So it's stress relief. It's like a support animal all in one. I love it. Fantastic. Okay, I don't think we've heard from you guys yet.
Yeah, so have you seen like those subway maps where they have, originally all of the subways were mapped kind of on top of maps that already existed. So like it would just kind of slap all the subway routes on top of already very complicated like topographical map with buildings and like forestry and stuff. So a map designer one day decided to get rid of everything on the subway map that doesn't have to do with subways. So like he would get rid of, even like within the subways, he would get rid of all the turns like and twists that a normal subway route would take, and he would just have the main line be a straight line, and then there would be sort of branches coming off of the main line for all of the subway routes that came off of that, and then all the locations. So it would show you where the subways are relative to each other, but it wouldn't show you necessarily where it is relative to other buildings and stuff. And you would, like at first thought, you would think that's too simplistic. Like I'm not going to know where I am relative to like a city or something. But if you know where a subway station is, or you know which city you're going to, all you really care about is how to get from point A to point B. So you just need to know the city you're coming from, and then the city you're going to, and then you can follow a couple lines and you're there, and you know which subway route to take. And it's very simplistic. You can see it on like any subway you go into now. That's like what all the subways use. So we kind of,
iconic, isn't it?
it is really iconic.
Yeah.
And people, like for the most part, that have used the subway before, like that, it's a really simple design. Like you get the feel for it pretty quickly. So we were just thinking of doing a similar thing where each room on the MUB was like a node on the subway map, and then there would just be like in places where the subway lines are, it would just be hallways. And so, and then the size of each node for each place would be like proportional to how big it is. So like the Union Court would be a really big node, and then like Stratford Room and like Granite State Room, which are more like popular meeting places, would also be like medium sized, and then all of like the little side rooms would be like very little, like just little classroom spaces. And then you could kind of, based on how popular the location that you're going to is, then you would kind of know like what size node to look for, and then you could like tap on each node, and a little menu would come up saying like what events are there, or like what times it's open. And then you could use location data on your phone to have like a Google Maps style tracker that kind of like snaps to the hallways that you're walking on and like keeps you on a certain route. And then have like landmarks and the signage that's around the map to kind of orient you. But the whole idea what it's a simple design. So there's nodes and then lines for hallways, and then like a couple pictures to orient yourself, and that's all there is to it. So you don't need to like really squint to like see exactly which room you're in on like a big map. You just have to worry about like the name of your place, and then the map will kind of do it.
I love the analogous inspiration, using the subway maps as a way to bring that into a different kind of navigation. And I think you're absolutely right. I love simplifying it and only give people exactly what they need and nothing more. That's fantastic. So I think, is this the last group, the pop singers, the last group we haven't heard from, right? I think we've got everyone else. Sorry to leave you for last. Last but not least.
So we came up with the idea of a puppet that would chase you to make sure that you get to where you're supposed to go in a quick amount of time. But then we thought, people might be scared to even enter the mob because the puppet's going to chase them around. And the puppet's going to be like 6 feet tall, like scary, like, saying meow because it's a wildcat. So instead, we thought that the Muppet, that's what we called it, summon the Muppet by pulling out your phone in the app, pressing the claw thing, and he appears. He just would sort of drop down from the ceiling. We were thinking it would be like a person doing some work study, but you never know, it could be a robot. Anyways, so we thought that the Muppet would be just a little too scary at first, so we thought that the traveler, for instance, the freshman like me, don't know where anything is. So we'd follow the Muppet and go to where we need to go. But if we're taking too long, we need to get somewhere quick, it would turn into the crazy Muppet that would chase us around so that we got where we needed to go quickly.
Like a herding.
Yeah, or like the horror movie.
or that.
But yeah, that was our idea.
So did you actually try it?
We did.
How did it work?
Well, not so well because we thought people would get scared of it, so we had to change our idea.
So you revised your idea. That's fantastic. I love it. That's very, very creative. It actually brought an image right into my head and made me laugh, so I love it. Okay, I am confident that we're out of time without looking at my watch, but I want to leave you with this. I don't know if anybody's heard of Alex Honnold or watched the documentary about what he did. He climbed El Capitan without any ropes, which is terrifying. So watch the documentary. What he talks about and what struck me about this, and it relates to what we're doing, is the concept of mastery. Before doing this free climb, he practiced each move. He memorized it and practiced it over and over and over and over again so he could do it in his sleep. And this is a little bit like that. When you first start to try some of these techniques, it's okay. You're not going to be great at them right away. It takes practice and it takes mastery, so keep at it. And if you can only do one thing in your project or one thing in your effort, talk to a user, do that. And then do all other things. Build on it. Do what he did. Start with one move. Practice that one move over and over and over again, and then add to it. And pretty soon, you'll be doing things without thinking about it. But don't expect to, we're going to send you a lot of resources. You don't have to try to do everything at once. Just do one thing differently than you might have done it before, and it'll have an impact. It'll make a big difference. Like tonight, you went out and just tried your prototypes, and you might have talked to people, and that made a big difference in your ultimate design, what you ended up with. So this is just to give you an idea of what he did. I don't know how well you can see it. That's him. That's how, no ropes. Terrifying, anyway. And there he is at the end. So to wrap up, remember this design thinking and human-centered design is not a magic wand. We're looking to change outcomes. When you're trying to introduce these concepts to your team, you might hear some objections, like we don't have time to do this, we already know our users, we already know the solution, we already know the problem. And again, ease people into it. If you can get them to try one thing, then that's a victory, and it will have an impact on the end result and the work. If you try to get people to change everything at once, they might not do any of it. So it's okay. One thing differently is a victory. Be patient and celebrate those small victories. So these are just a few of my favorite things, but we're going to send you out some other reading resources and videos you can watch. Just want to thank you. Hope we're not too late. Thank you for spending your time here tonight. Do you want to wrap things up?
So first of all, Beth, thank you very much.